Good morning, guys. I have missed you bunches. This morning we are picking up on week 2 in our Unit 4 reader, and the story that we are going to read together and annotate together is Quiet. It's on page 12 of your reader. So the title of our story is Quiet, and again, it's an excerpt from Lad, a Dog, a classic story of a courageous collie. So I really want you to think as we start reading about point of view, what point of view the story is told from, whose thoughts and feelings are we understanding, and we're going to be really focusing today on key details. The first paragraph on page 12 you can see is in italics, and remember they do that to kind of bring our attention to the background of the story. Because it is an excerpt, we kind of need to know what's going on before we start reading. Lad, a dog. Lets me know the character. A classic story of a courageous collie. Was first published in 1919. It was based on a collection of stories that had first appeared in magazines. The book's author, Albert Payson Terhune, was a breeder of dogs. He raised and trained many collies. This kind of lets me know he knows a lot about dogs. He was an expert. And Lad was his real-life pet. He also wrote other books that featured Lad as the main character. The place, in the following passage from chapter 2, was Terhune's own Sunnybank estate where he lived with his wife and dogs. This kind of lets me know, being that this was his real-life pet, that this could possibly be based on a real story. So maybe kind of some realistic fiction. All right, we're on page 13. To Lad, the real world was bounded by the place. I'm highlighting the place because it's in capital letters, and it kind of lets me know that this is how maybe he refers to his area of where he lives. Outside, there was a certain number of miles in land, and there was an uncertain number of people. But the miles were uninspiring, except for a cross-country tramp with the master. And the people were foolish and strange folk. I'm going to highlight that. Who either stared at him, which always annoyed Lad, or else tried to pat him, which he hated. But the place was the place. So in paragraph 1, we get a very good idea of how the Lad, which is the dog, feels about people. So he says, there were miles and miles of land for me to romp and play and go and do whatever. But there were so many people, an uncertain amount of people. How does he feel about people? It says the people were foolish, strange, they annoyed him, and he hated them to pet him. Yeah, so he doesn't care too much for people. Okay. Always he had lived on the place. He felt he owned it. So he has some ownership here of this place because it was his land where he lived always. It was assuredly his to enjoy, to guard, and to patrol from high road to lake. It was his world. So while he doesn't care for people, how does he feel about where he lives? Yes. He loves his land. The denizens of every world must have at least one deity to worship. Lad had one, the master. Oh, so he worships his master. Indeed, he had 2 deities. So it says most people in every world, somebody has at least one deity that they worship. One like a god or somebody that they really worship. But he has 2. It was the master and the mistress. And because the dog was strong of soul and chivalric withal, and because the mistress was altogether lovable, so here we have some descriptions of the mistress, Lad placed her altar even above the master's, which was holy as it should have been. All right, so here we know that I'm going to say, I'm not going to use the word loves yet, because we don't know if he actually loves his masters in this paragraph, but we do know that he has a strong, maybe loyalty to the master and the mistress. But this mistress right here is his top priority, right? All right, page 14. There were other people at the place. Let's see how he feels about the other people. Do we have a prediction of how he feels about the other people based on what we already know? He doesn't care for people, right? Except the master and the mistress. So let's see what happens here. People to whom a dog must be courteous as becomes a thoroughbred, and whose caresses he must accept. All right, caresses is petting, and it says he has to be courteous and he has to accept their touches. Very often there were guests too, and from puppyhood, Lad had been taught the sacredness of the guest law. Civilly, he would endure the pettings of these visiting outlanders. Gravely, so civilly, he would endure the pettings. Gravely, he would shake hands on request. He would even permit them to paw him or haul him about, if they were of the obnoxious dog-mauling breed. But the moment politeness would permit, he always withdrew very quietly. So here we go. If he felt he could be polite about it, he would withdraw very quietly from their reach, and if possible, from their sight as well. Oh, this tells us so much about Lad. So, first key detail in this paragraph is this one about the sacredness of the guest law. So we know that the guest law is important. And he has been taught the guest law requires him to be polite to visitors. And by being polite, he has to endure their pettings, shake hands, allow them to paw him or haul him. So he's learned that even though he doesn't like people, it's very important that when there are visitors at the place, his home, that he must be polite. But if given the chance, he would leave. I'm just going to put he left. He was like, deuces, out. All right. Of all the dogs on the place, Big Lad alone had free run of the house by day and night. So paragraph 5 teaches us something important. We knew of all the dogs. That means there are more dogs than him. Do y'all hear my dog in the background whining? He hears me talking to y'all, and he can't be in here with me right now. Big Lad alone had free run of the house by day and night. So was he an outside dog? Not necessarily. He was allowed inside. He slept in a cave under the piano. He even had access to the sacred dining room at mealtimes, where always he lay to the left of the master's chair. What do you think happened when he laid left to the master's chair? Maybe he fed him scraps, table scraps. With the master, he would willingly unbend for a romp at any or all times. So he'd go out to play with the master anytime he wanted. At the mistress's behest, he would play with all the silly abandon of a puppy, rolling on the ground at her feet, making as though to seize and crush one of her little shoes in his mighty jaws, wriggling and waving his legs in air when she buried her hand in the masses of his chest ruff, the otherwise comporting himself with complete loss of dignity. So, it says he would go with the master out and about on the land for a romp, What did he do here for the mistress? It says he lost all dignity. Yeah, it says he would play. So we know that he thinks playing like a puppy is silly. Right? He says, "Oh man, I lost all dignity." That means he makes him feel so silly. But to all except these two, he was calmly unapproachable. So did other people think he was sweet, cute, and oh, look, it's a puppy? Nope. Others didn't really think that he was a very friendly dog. From his earliest days, he had never forgotten he was an aristocrat among inferiors. So this means he kind of feels strongly about himself and calmly aloof. He moved among his subjects. Then all at once, into the sweet routine of the house of peace, came horror. And I'm going to leave us here today with a little cliffhanger because we don't know what's going to happen next. It's kind of an uh-oh moment, maybe the climax of the story. So the first part of the story today gave us some key details about Lad, who he is as a companion, as a dog, how he feels about people, how he interacts with people. So if you go back to look over what we've said today, you'll remember that we made some notes about the fact that, starting on page 13, he doesn't care for people. He loves his land and protects his land. He does feel loyalty and possibly love to his master and the mistress. I think we would say he probably loved them. He believes strongly in the guest law of being polite to visitors. He was the only dog at the property that was allowed inside. He felt playing as a puppy was silly because he took his job seriously. And then, of course, and then that kind of follows with over here. It says he lost all dignity because he kind of thinks highly of himself. We'll add that note. He thinks highly of himself. And I'm sure, especially amongst the other dogs on the property. And then we have this moment where it says that all at once, the sweet routine of the house of peace came horror. So this lets us know something not so great's about to happen. We'll find out what that is tomorrow. See you guys in just a little bit. Missed you bunches.